Hey everyone, my name is Lauren Waits. I am a Tennessee realtor here in Memphis, specifically Germantown. And today I wanted to do something really exciting, and that is go through the purchase and sale agreement. I know what you're thinking, Lauren, how is an 11-page contract exciting? It's not, but it's super important. This is the form that you will fill out with your realtor if you were to make an offer on a property. It's a standard Tennessee Association of Realtors form, TAR, Tennessee Association of Realtors form. And it's literally the same from person to person, just updated each year. And the only thing that changes are the blanks that you fill in. So it's really important to know what you're filling out and signing. And it's good to think through how you would structure an offer when you get to that point. So I'm just gonna go through the main high points and not every single line, even though there's nifty line numbers. But if at any point you have any questions, please ask. I'm here to help. And I would love to help you just answer any questions. I feel like knowledge is power, and that's why I wanted to make this video, however boring it is, so you can just feel a little more informed about this process. So on the first page are the obvious things like address and purchase price. And I'm going to talk through all the things that aren't quite so obvious that are a big deal. And they can also help your offer stand out or not stand out as much. So it's good to know what you're up against and what you're filling out. So on this first page are items that will remain and items that will not remain with the home. So in Tennessee, anything fixtured to the home, which means like literally attached to it. So curtain rods and drapes, ceiling fans, chandeliers, those automatically convey or are sold to the buyer with the home when they buy it. So anything that's not fixtured is negotiable. That means appliances. This is a big deal and a big thing to spell out in this section. If you want the washer and dryer, be sure to put that in there. Don't just not say anything and then show up at final walkthrough or worse after closing and the washer and dryer is not there and say, what happened? And then it was never part of the contract, so the sellers were able to take it. So please spell it out in this section, what you want and or what the seller wants. Hopefully the seller is organized and already has filled out if there's anything that they want to keep. Just a note about this, it can be a good idea if you're in a multiple offer situation to have your realtor call the listing agent and ask if there's anything specific that the sellers want to hold on to. I recently won a deal that was a major multiple offer situation for my buyers because it turns out the seller really wanted a certain chandelier that was in the home. And in Tennessee, that was supposed to be sold to the buyers, but the sellers really wanted it. And my buyers were cool with letting the sellers keep it. So we wrote it into the contract and that made their offer get picked, was that one thing. So again, just be thinking through how you would want to structure it with items that will remain or not remain with the home. So the next page is appraisal. This is a big deal. You can either make your offer contingent appraisal or not contingent appraisal, and it's literally just a checkbox. So you want to make sure you know if you're checking that box or not and what it means. So if it's contingent appraisal, this is the most common route. It just means like, hey, the property has to be worth what a third party independent appraiser says it's worth. Or you can waive appraisal and say, I don't care. What I wrote on the contract price is what I wrote on the first page as the contract price is what I'm going to pay you. And if I'm getting a mortgage and the bank says it's actually worth less, I'll cover that difference. I'll cover that gap at closing with my own cash. That's why it's scary, because if you waive appraisal and the appraisal comes in low, you are responsible for that difference with cash at the closing table. I always recommend making your offer contingent appraisal, but when things were crazy with COVID, a lot of people were waiving appraisal or offering what's called an appraisal gap, and I can do a video about that later. But just know that that is on this page, and that box either needs to be checked or not, but just know what you're doing with that page. Okay, this next page, a little boring, but it's important. Closing expenses. So the sellers are going to have their own closing expense, and you as a buyer are going to have your own closing expenses. As a buyer, your expenses are typically higher, usually about 2 to 3% of the purchase price. So if you're buying a $300,000 or $300,000 home, your closing expenses are anywhere between $6,000 and $9,000. Historically, sellers would often help pay for buyers' closing expenses. Then things went nuts during COVID and buyers were paying their own closing expenses. And now we're getting back to buyers having their closing costs paid for by the seller, which is awesome. It's less cash you have to show up with at the closing table. I recently had a deal from my buyer and the sellers paid all his closing expenses, and it was awesome because all he had to worry about, was his down payment. So just make sure that's outlined in here of what you want to do with closing expenses. Also on here is your closing agency. There's just, if you have a closing attorney or a real estate attorney you want to use. Otherwise, I'm happy to give you some recommendations, or your realtor probably has some recommended closing attorneys as well. And you can, in most cases, use the same agency as the seller if you want to, but just, talk it through with your realtor about how you want to approach that. And lastly on here is earnest money. So in our Memphis market, 1% of contract price is the typical earnest money amount. So again, back to that $300,000 house, $3,000 would be an average earnest money amount. The more money you put down for earnest money, the more earnest you are about the home. But typically 1%. And this is money that you will get back if your contingencies aren't satisfied. So we talked through that appraisal contingency. If the appraisal came in low, you would get your earnest money back. And we'll talk about inspections. If your inspection contingency isn't satisfied, you'd get your earnest money back. And this is money that will go to work for you at the closing table. So it'll be applied towards your down payment and closing costs. So it's not like it's just going into a void or going straight to the sellers. It goes to work for you. On this next page, just wanted to point out closing date. This is when you're confident that the contract and everything will close. So that means your lender has all their ducks in a row, that the title attorney or title agency has all their ducks in a row, and you as the buyer have all your ducks in a row. If you're getting a loan, you probably need about 30 days. Some local lenders can close sooner, some need more time. But this is just important, and I will say, I had a situation where my buyers needed to push back closing 48 hours and the sellers threw a fit because the date on the original contract, which is a binding legal contract, said this, and they wanted monetary compensation for having to push out closing. This isn't as common as the market is shifting to buyers' favor. Most sellers are wanting to get the deal through, but just know that this is part of the legally binding agreement. So to pick a closing date that you know for sure will work. If you're gonna be out of the country or something, don't pick that day. But there are mobile attorneys, or mobile notaries, sorry. Okay, deed, this is just the names you want on the title for the property. This I've seen be something like, say, the wife is getting the mortgage because she has the better credit and makes the most money and qualifies for the loan, but the husband would be on the deed for title of the property, so you could put both their names there. So it doesn't necessarily have to match whose name the loan is in. Okay, guys, we're almost done. We're over halfway. Inspections. So inspections are a big deal. And there's two ways to approach inspections, and I'll walk through them. So you can either waive all inspections and say, I'm not even gonna do inspections. I'm gonna buy this house as it is. Or you can say, I'm gonna do inspections. And if you say, I'm going to do inspections, there's two ways you can approach it. So you can either say, I'm gonna do inspections, but we'll buy the house as is. Once I do my inspections, I just kind of wanna know what I'm buying and do my own due diligence. Or I'm gonna do inspections, but I want to have a resolution period after where we talk through what might need to be fixed or how things might need to be handled. If I need a concession, I don't know, but I just want a resolution period. So obviously for a seller, waiver of all inspections is most competitive because they don't have to have anything inspected on their property. Second most competitive is buying it as is. And third most competitive is a resolution period. So this is kind of however you want to handle it. But you're gonna have an inspection period that you write in here. So shorter is more competitive, longer is less competitive. Average in our area is 7 to 14 days. But you would write your inspection period in here, and then you would have your resolution period if you wanna go that route. So let's do an example. You had a 10-day inspection period. You have those 10 days to get all your inspections done, and you opted to have a 3-day resolution period. which means I had 3 days to hammer out how I want to proceed with my seller. Because after your inspections comes back, you're kind of back in the negotiation phase of, do I want the sellers to fix this, or I want a credit for this, or I want this to be handled this way. The resolution period puts a time limit on that kind of back and forth. And if that resolution period or your inspection demands aren't satisfied, you can get your earnest money back. But that's just kind of what that is and how you outline it. I just wanted to outline it, right here at the beginning. Moving along, home protection plan. This is if you want a home warranty and to be paid for by the seller. Wasn't common for a while, starting to get common again. If you want a home warranty, just whatever floats your boat. Some people hate them, some people love them, kind of however you feel about it. But this is the point where you can ask for one and have the seller to pay for it at closing out of their proceeds. You don't have to do anything. And then the last page is special stips. So special stipulations. If you can see, it's literally this empty box. So this is where you can ask for anything that hasn't been covered earlier in the contract that you want. So I've had buyers say sellers to clean out attic, or sellers to, whatever you want to say. This is your opportunity to do so. And then lastly is your time limit of offer. That is where you put an expiration date saying like the offer has to be accepted or countered by this date or it's no longer valid. This is a good strategy if you want to do something really aggressive. You can put a shorter offer deadline on there to kind of create that sense of urgency with the sellers in terms of making them want to accept it. But that's it. I hope that wasn't too boring. But it is super important, and I just wanted you guys to feel empowered about what it looks like to make an offer in Tennessee and what all the components are. And like I said, I didn't go through everything. So if you have a question about something specific, feel free to reach out to me. But I just wanted to kind of hit the high points and outline what all these terms are and what all you're signing up for when you fill out a contract. If I can help you in any way, my number is 901-647-4302. My email is lauren@itsdwell.com. That's itsdwell.com. And my website is lauren.itsdwell.com. Thanks. Bye.